The Night Gwen Stacy Died, 1973. One of the most defining arcs in Spider-Man's history came in The Amazing Spider-Man 121-122 by Jerry Conway and Gil Kane. Often called the end of the Silver Age of comics, this story was groundbreaking because it forced Peter Parker to experience true tragedy, not just temporary setbacks. The Green Goblin kidnaps Gwen Stacy, hurling her off the George Washington Bridge in a cruel attempt to break Spider-Man emotionally. Peter, believing he can save her, fires a web line that catches Gwen, but the sudden stop snaps her neck instantly. For readers in 1973, this was shocking. Death in comics was usually temporary or reserved for side characters, but Gwen was Spider-Man's great love at the time. In the following issue, Peter faces Norman Osborn in one of their most brutal encounters, and the Goblin is seemingly killed by his own glider. This arc established the recurring theme that Spider-Man's victories often come with devastating personal losses, a cornerstone of his storytelling for decades. The Clone Saga, 1970s and 1990s. Few Spider-Man arcs are as controversial as the Clone Saga. The original appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 149, 1975, written by Jerry Conway, where Peter Parker fought a clone of himself created by the Jackal. The clone seemingly dies, but the seeds were planted for decades of future confusion. In the 1990s, Marvel revisited this concept in a sprawling storyline across multiple titles, running from 1994 to 1996. Here, the clone, Ben Reilly, returns, and Peter begins to question whether he himself might be the clone. The saga introduced characters like Carnage and gave fans the Scarlet Spider identity, but it became infamous for its length, publishing delays, and editorial chaos. Still, the Clone Saga remains a crucial part of Spider-Man's mythos because it explored themes of identity, authenticity, and legacy. Despite its rocky reception, Ben Reilly endures as a fan-favorite Spider-Man variant, and Carnage has reappeared in more recent stories as a darker, more violent version of Peter's potential. Kraven's Last Hunt, 1987. Written by J.M. DeMatteis and drawn by Mike Zeck, Kraven's Last Hunt is one of the darkest Spider-Man stories ever told. Running through Web of Spider-Man numbers 31 to 32, Amazing Spider-Man numbers 293 to 294, and Spectacular Spider-Man 131 to 132, the arc sees Kraven the Hunter finally defeat Spider-Man by tranquilizing him and burying him alive. Believing he has proven himself superior, Kraven dons the Spider-Man costume and violently fights crime, demonstrating his own warped sense of honor. Meanwhile, Peter struggles to escape his grave, symbolizing his unbreakable will. Eventually, he emerges, confronts Kraven, and finds that Kraven no longer wishes to continue their rivalry. In one of the most shocking moments in Spider-Man's publication history, Kraven takes his own life, believing he has achieved his final victory. The story is widely regarded as a masterpiece, showing Spider-Man's resilience and Kraven's tragic obsession. Maximum Carnage, 1993. The early 1990s brought a different kind of Spider-Man arc with Maximum Carnage, a 14-part crossover spanning multiple titles, including Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, and Amazing Spider-Man. Written by David Michelinie and others, it told the story of Carnage breaking free from prison and assembling a murderous family that included Shriek, Demogoblin, and Doppelganger. Together, they unleash chaos across New York, with Spider-Man forced to team up with unlikely allies such as Venom, Black Cat, Cloak and Dagger, Captain America, and even Morbius. The arc was criticized at the time for being overly long, but it has become iconic for its sheer scope and its depiction of Spider-Man struggling with his own morality. Should he kill Carnage to save innocence, or remain true to his principles? The video game adaptation for the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis further cemented Maximum Carnage as a fan-favorite storyline, even among casual fans. The Other, Evolve or Die, 2005 to 2006. In The Other, Evolve or Die, Spider-Man experiences one of the strangest arcs of his modern career, spread across Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man 1 to 4, Marvel Knights Spider-Man number 19 to 22, and Amazing Spider-Man 525 to 528. Written by J. Michael Straczynski, Peter David, and Reginald Hudlin, the story introduces a mystical element to Spider-Man's powers. Peter begins experiencing unusual visions and symptoms that suggest his body is rejecting him as its host. Morlun, the vampiric predator who had previously nearly killed him, returns to hunt him once again. During their battle, Spider-Man is savagely beaten to death, but his body undergoes a metamorphosis inside a cocoon, allowing him to be reborn with new abilities. After this arc, Peter briefly gained stingers that emerged from his arms and enhanced night vision. While these powers would eventually fade away, the other highlighted the idea that Spider-Man's abilities are not purely scientific, but mystical in origin, tied to the spider totem introduced earlier by JMS. Civil War, 2006 to 2007. Spider-Man played one of the most important roles in Marvel's Civil War, which spanned multiple titles but was central in Amazing Spider-Man 5, 29 to 538. Written by J. Michael Straczynski. With art by Ron Garney, this arc forced Peter into a choice that would change his life forever. With the Superhuman Registration Act dividing the hero community, Tony Stark convinces Peter to publicly unmask as Spider-Man in front of the world, revealing that Peter Parker had been Spider-Man since his teenage years. This decision has catastrophic consequences, endangering Aunt May and Mary Jane, and eventually pushing Peter to switch sides from Iron Man's pro-registration faction to Captain America's underground resistance. This arc also introduced the Iron Spider suit, created by Tony Stark, which remains one of Spider-Man's most iconic alternate costumes. Civil War showed Spider-Man at his most vulnerable, caught between mentors, ideology, and the crushing weight of responsibility for his loved ones. One More Day, 2007. Perhaps the most controversial Spider-Man arc in history is One More Day, told in Amazing Spider-Man numbers 544 to 545, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 24, and Sensational Spider-Man number 41. Written by J. Michael Straczynski and Joe Quesada, this arc follows the aftermath of Civil War. Aunt May is shot by an assassin targeting Peter, and her condition grows critical. Desperate to save her life, Peter turns to every ally and genius in the Marvel Universe, but no one can help. Eventually, Mephisto offers Peter a deal. He will save May's life if Peter and Mary Jane give up their marriage, erasing it from existence. In one of the most divisive editorial decisions ever made, Peter accepts resetting continuity so that he and MJ never married. For many fans, One More Day remains the breaking point of Marvel's handling of Spider-Man, but it also reshaped the character for over a decade, returning him to the perpetual single young hero that editorial favored. The arc highlights how classification of powers sometimes means nothing, because even Spider-Man, with all his gifts, cannot fight death itself without paying an impossible price. Spider-Verse, 2014 to 2015. In Amazing Spider-Man number 9 to 15, Volume 3, Dan Slott created Spider-Verse, one of the largest multiversal crossovers in Marvel history. The arc introduced the Inheritors, vampiric beings led by Morlun, who hunt spider totems across realities. To combat them, dozens of alternate Spider-Men and Spider-Women unite, including Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, and even Japanese Spider-Man from the 1970s TV series. The story not only celebrated Spider-Man's legacy, but also expanded it, proving that the mantle could exist in infinite variations across the multiverse. For Peter Parker, it was both a rallying moment and a chance to see how others bore the same responsibility he had carried since 1962. Spider-Verse revitalized interest in alternate Spider-Man, leading to sequels like Spider-Geddon, 2018, and heavily inspiring Sony's Spider-Verse animated films. Superior Spider-Man, 2013 to 2014. One of the boldest arcs in modern Spider-Man history came with Superior Spider-Man number 1 to 31, written by Dan Slott. In this story, Dr. Octopus, dying from terminal illness, manages to swap minds with Peter Parker. With Peter trapped in Otto's dying body, Doc Ock takes over Peter's life as Spider-Man. Believing himself superior, he vows to be a more effective and ruthless Spider-Man, using advanced technology, surveillance, and lethal force against criminals. For nearly 2 years in publishing time, the superior Spider-Man operated in the Marvel Universe, even forming his own army of spider-bots to monitor New York. The arc challenged readers to consider what makes Spider-Man who he is, the powers, or Peter Parker's moral compass. Eventually, Peter's consciousness returns, proving that it isn't the claws, webs, or intelligence that make him Spider-Man. It's his humanity. Beyond and Modern Arcs, 2021 to 2022. The Beyond era, told in Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 5, numbers 75 to 93, reintroduced Ben Reilly as Spider-Man after years of absence. Backed by the Beyond Corporation, Ben takes up the mantle with new tech and resources, while Peter Parker is temporarily sidelined by injuries. This arc questions the legacy of Spider-Man once again. Is Spider-Man defined by Peter Parker, or is it a symbol that others can inherit? The Beyond story also re-established Ben Reilly as an important figure in modern Marvel, setting him on a darker path that leads into the dark web crossover. These modern arcs may not carry the same historical weight as Kraven's Last Hunt or The Night Gwen Stacy Died, but they continue the tradition of Spider-Man evolving through reinvention, tragedy, and legacy. Spider-Man's history is defined not by a single event, but by arcs that repeatedly test his spirit, his relationships, and his moral code. From Gwen Stacy's tragic death to the sprawling multiverse of Spider-Verse, every major storyline has reshaped who Peter Parker is and what it means to be Spider-Man. Unlike many heroes, Peter's story is one of constant change. He grows, he suffers, he learns, and sometimes he loses. But through all of it, one truth endures: with great power must come great responsibility. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure you subscribe to Explained Comics and turn on notifications, because we have even more explorations of Marvel and DC's greatest stories on the way. And I want to hear from you. Which Spider-Man arc do you think is the most important of all time? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and your pick might be featured in a future video.